Hi everyone, this is Andrew. Today we'll be doing our 5th JavaScript tutorial and we'll be continuing on with our Pathfinder ability score generator. So you can go ahead and download this from the last tutorial or continue on from where you left off. So remember we had this ability score generator where we could select between standard, classic and heroic and roll the appropriate statistics. Today we'll be focusing on the 4th method, dice pool. Now it's a bit more complicated than the rest, so I'm going to dedicate an entire tutorial to it. Each character has a pool of 24d6 to assign to his statistics. Before the dice are rolled, the player selects the number of dice to roll for each score, with a minimum of 3d6 for each attribute. Once the dice have been assigned, the player rolls each group and totals the result of the 3 highest dice. For more high-powered games, the GM should increase the total number of dice to 28. This method generates characters of a similar power to the standard method. Okay, so there's actually kind of 2 methods in here, isn't there? There's this 24d6 pool, and there's also a 28d6 pool. So copy all that information, open up your HTML file. Now, first step is to add a couple of new methods. So go to your enum, or essentially an enum. So we'll have a dice pool 24, say, and a dice pool 28. Now that's a wall of text, isn't it? It probably wouldn't look very good. We'll keep it just for the time being. Now we also need to add some extra radio buttons. So go down to your HTML, duplicate that, and just update them. So we'll go dice pool 24 there. This is what the user will see. Dice pool, say 24d6, and dice pool 28, which is just 28d6. Same method essentially, except the maximum will be different. Go ahead and run that. There we go. So that's pretty simple, just adding the new. Okay, we've got an error, I'd suggest. We're missing some. We're missing something. Probably in this. Yeah. Oh, I haven't got a comma here. That would be the problem. Yep. Okay. Yes, that text is probably too much, I would suggest. Let's summarize that. Each character has a pool of 24d6. Let's see. You have a pool of 24d6 to assign to your statistics. Before the dice are rolled, blah blah blah. Probably don't need that. With a minimum of 3d6 for each ability. I reckon that will cover it. We'll copy that and paste that into there. Just update the number of dice. Quick look. That looks better. You have a pool of 24d6 to assign to your statistics with a minimum of 3d6 for each ability. I think that tells us the main. Let the roller do the rest. Let the roller do all the work. Right. So next step. So we're setting the dice pool. Yeah. Now what happens if we hit roll here? Well, it doesn't do very much, does it? We have to implement that. But I think the first step would be when we select either of these two, we should be seeing some new information, like a place where the user can change their dice pool or modify their dice pool. So how about we add a 5th column? We add a 5th column to this table. We can do that here within the HTML. The class, I guess it will be borderless. I think it should. Let's try it without. Yeah, it looks a bit silly. We'll keep it borderless, seeing that dice is borderless. And we'll add another TD. Within this, we're going to put a input because we need to allow the user to modify the dice pool. Now there is a built-in input of type number, and it gives a UI element. So let's have a look what that looks like. Yeah, it's got basically a picker. You can go up and down. Now there's a few problems with this. One, it's just too wide. Secondly, we can go into negatives, which is silly. We need to set a minimum of 3, don't we? Because it says you must have 3d6 in each ability. So we can do that within here. Min equals 3. We might as well do a max while we're here. Max equals... Now what is the maximum? What is the maximum we could actually allow the user to put into here? Well, there is a limit, isn't there? Here you've got 28 d6. Now if we've got a minimum of 3 in each, that's a total of 18 dice. But there's only 10 dice left, isn't there? So you could put a maximum of an extra 10 into any one ability. So an extra 10 would be a total of 13, wouldn't it? Not that anybody would do that, I don't think, but let's put a limit there. Otherwise they could put 1,000,000 and that'd be just silly. So 13 would be the absolute maximum. Let's see how that operates. So yeah, that seems to be okay. Remembering they can also edit this, so they could put 2, for example. What would that do? Yeah, there's some sort of inbuilt validation. So if we try to roll, it'll say, please select a value there's no less than 3. So that's good. It's got some inbuilt. That'll save us some time. If you have 3, though, it works. Yeah, well, it's not working, but it's not validating, is it? It's not stopping the user. Yeah. The next step, we don't want to show this pool, do we, in these 3 methods? We only want to show the pool in these 2. So that means we'd have to hide the column. First of all, actually, let's do some CSS, because this column is way too wide. It doesn't look very good. And we don't want it to be... make it borderless. Make it borderless too. Okay, it looks like it's got a built-in border. That's fine. I mean, that looks okay. It shows you that it's one sort of widget. Now, usually you use size to change the width, but I don't think size works for this type of input. No, it doesn't do anything. So we'll just have to use some CSS to handle that. So we'll go right up the top to CSS. Now, it's an input, isn't it? Now, because it's of type number, we can just use square brackets. Type equals number. So only for input types of number, of type number, that is. We can just set the width. There's a few ways you could use pixels, you could use this, you could use that. I'm going to use, it's a measurement called EM. So just say 2EM. EM is the width of a M, like the letter M. So that means it'll kind of suit the font being used. Let's try that. Looking okay. It hides the, if you go up to higher numbers, it's not very good. Increase that to say 3. Great, that was good. Next, as I said, we want to hide. Well, what should they be allowed to do? These methods, they're fine. Now the dice pool methods, because we'll only, well, first of all, it's saving that in memory, isn't it? We want to refresh this every time. Secondly, we don't want this roll button to be available until they've assigned all their dice. So until they've assigned all 24, assuming that we've got a default of 3 in all of these to begin with, that should not be available. So we can go ahead and not show that. Now where would we do that? Set dice. How about in set dice? So, handle dice pool methods. So if the dice, remember we're setting it here, if dice equals dice pool 24, or if dice equals dice pool 28, so both of these are going to be handled the same way. What do we want to do? Well, the first step is we want to hide the roll button. Hide the roll button. And of course, the opposite of that, so if it's not equal to one of these methods, we want to show the roll button. Okay, so what is the roll button? Let's go look for it in our... The roll button... So we'll have to give our roll button an ID, won't we? So that we can access it from code. The ID will, you can just call it roll button or any other term, as long as it's unique to this file. Did I copy that? So back up in our set dice method, we can go document get element by ID roll button, and we want to set its disabled, don't we? Disabled. It's not hide, we want to disable the roll button, don't we? That'd probably be the better way of doing it. And this will enable the roll button. So disabled equals false, oh sorry, true, because we want it to be disabled. And otherwise we'll enable it, so disabled will be false. Let's test. There we go, see the roll's not available now. But if we go back, it is available. See if we didn't have that else, if we didn't do this, what would happen? So the roll's enabled, the roll's disabled, go back to one of our standard methods. See, it's still disabled, so we need to re-enable it, don't we? What else? Well, we don't want this column showing for these other methods. It'll just be confusing for the player. There's no need to show that, except for the dice pool method. So how do we hide an entire column? First, we should do some setup inside the table. You can actually make a Col group, a column group. So we'll do that. Just do this at the start of the table. We can do this Col group, and within that we can use the Col tag. Now, Col, for the first 4 columns, so 1, 2, 3, 4, we don't want to do anything. So you can refer to them just by using span. So that means the first 4 columns, nothing. We're not going to do anything with that. Now the 5th column, so that's our new column, we'll give that an ID. ID will equal the pool column. The pool column. So we can refer to the 5th. We can refer to the 5th column in our script. What was it? Set, wasn't it? Set. So we want to hide. No, we want to show the dice pool column. How do we do that? Well, we can use our document get element by ID pool column, and we want to set its visibility, don't we? So there is a tag, actually it's under style first, so style is our CSS, style.visibility equals, I believe it's visible. You can check this up in CSS just by looking on the internet. Now what's the opposite of that? So this will be hide the dice. So for all other methods, except for dice pools, hide the dice pool column. So I think it's collapse, is it? Let's try it. So it's not showing for those three. It's still working, yes. Dice pool method. Great. It's showing that column, but it's hiding it as soon as we go back to them. Excellent. Next, we'll need to set the default for each of our ability scores to 3, because we have to have a minimum of 3 in each one. So go back to your HTML file and go down to the HTML section. So how do we detect when, we need to keep track of how many dice are assigned to each pool. So we can use the onInput property and we'll have to use a method, won't we? So we can just use this method, change pool. Now we'll need to know that this is coming from strength, won't we? We'll have to track this. So there'll be strength, there'll be dexterity. So we'll need to pass what ability we're actually changing. Otherwise it won't work. So let's make an enum for all the statistics. So constant, technically it's an ability, isn't it? Ability equals strength. Let's just use the abbreviation. Dex con int wiz char. And we'll just go to here and grab a brief summary of each of those. Here we go, strength. Strength measures just muscle and physical power. Dexterity measures agility, reflexes, and balance. Constitution represents your character's health and stamina. Int intelligence determines how well your character learns and reasons. Wisdom describes your character's willpower, common sense, awareness, and intuition. And charisma measures a character's personality, personal magnetism, ability to lead, and appearance. Okay. So back to our HTML. So on input, when they select up and down or type in a number, we want to change the pool, don't we? So we'll use ability, strength. I think that's all we'll need for this column. So we can go ahead and do that for each of them. Copy and paste into each of the abilities. And just update the relevant. Is that all we need to change? Seemingly. Wisdom, int, con, and dex. Great. So we'll have to go ahead and create this function. So go back up to your function list. Change pool. Now, what does it take as a parameter, as a argument? Ability. So we'd use a switch statement for this, aren't we? Enums are ideal for using switch statements. Ability. Case strength. We want to do something. Not sure yet, what yet, but we'll just lay it out. It's 5, isn't it? Strength, dex, con, int, whiz, and charisma. So something happens. What happens? Actually, before we implement any of this, let's go ahead and set the defaults first. Right, so maybe in the reset method, remember we reset everything every time we, let's roll, reset. So we reset all the abilities. We reset the dice string. We reset the modifiers. Well, we want to reset the pool for each of the... So we should go ahead and create a variable for each. I'll just duplicate that. Create a variable for each of the pools, the individual ability pools. And char pool. So in our reset method, reset method, we're going to set all the pools to 3 because that's their minimum. Dex pool, con pool, int pool, whiz pool, and char pool. We want to set them to 3. Well, it'll just be an integer, so we can just do that. But that won't output anything, will it? So we need to go to our update UI method. That's where we do all our UI, handle our UI. So update the dice strings. Yep. Have an update the ability dice pools. Get on the strength pool. Do we have that down there? Let's just double check. We'll have to put that in, I think. Just a thought. I think it's the... It shouldn't be the input that is borderless. It's the table cell, isn't it? The table data. So just go ahead and update that. So it's the TD that I would think is the borderless part of this. Right, and instead we're going to give these each an ID. So ID will equal char pool. In a similar way that we've got char dice, char mod, char score, we can have char pool. So instead of the borderless class, we'll put in the pool ID. Int pool, con pool, dex pool, strength pool. Good. Make sure we haven't broken anything. Looking good so far. I see it's got a thinner. By removing that borderless to the table cell instead, we can see that the innate border of the selector That error is okay because we haven't implemented that function yet. See, it starts at the minimum. Yeah, so the border is a little bit thinner, isn't it? So that looks good. Except that it's blank, isn't it? So we need to set that. So under update UI, so strength pool, we want to set the value to strength pool. I think that should work. Let's test it. We may have to close this first because it's got a memory, I think. Yep, so strength is being set. Duplicate that for each of the abilities. Dex, con, int, wiz, char, wiz, int, con, and dex. Good. So if we change that, hopefully, yes, it resets for each of these pools. So if I change that to 6, go to another method, that's working, go to this method, yes, it resets it all to the minimum of 3. Not to say that we can't change it to something below that, but it does flag it. But this arrow button will not change it below 3 and will not put it above 13. Good. It'd be nice to keep track of the total number of dice that have been allocated thus far, wouldn't it? So that the user knows exactly how many dice they've used or got left. So how about we go ahead and create a total underneath this column, at the bottom of this column. So head down to your last row here. So we've got a mod total. There'll be the dice column we don't want anything, do we? So we can just put a blank TD in there. And then our last column will be, give it an ID. ID will equal pool total, say. And it'll also be borderless, so set the borderless. Close that. Okay, that dice one needs to be borderless too. Looking good. Pool total. So how about we go ahead and make a variable. So what do we need to know? Well, we need to know the maximum, don't we? So how about we have dice pool max, so that's determined by the method, it's either 24 or 28. And dice pool total, so that's our current total. And we'll do some comparison later. Dice pool max, dice pool total. Now when do we know the dice pool max? Well, when we set the method, don't we? So if you go to the set dice, so if it's dice 24 or dice 28, we definitely know it's maximum, don't we? So get pool maximum. We'll have to use another if statement here because this is only telling us that it's either 24 or 28. We don't know which one it is as yet. So we can just do, so if, we're basically doing this, aren't we? Again, if dice equals 24, dice pool max equals 24, right? Else, we could just do an else, but let's state it explicitly, just in case there's going to be another dice pool method that we add later. If it equals 28, dice pool max equals 28. So as soon as they set this, as soon as they select the radio button, we're setting this dice pool maximum. Good. Now we need to output the dice pool total. Update the dice pool total. What did we call it? Pool total? Think so. Just have a double check. Pool total. Pool total dot value will equal. It's not a value, is it? It would be the inner HTML. There's no value. It's just a table data. It's just a table cell. Inner HTML will equal the dice pool total, whatever that is. We'll define that soon. Now in our reset method, which is called every time they change dice method, so in the reset method we could go ahead and set the default. So dice pool total will equal, well, 6 times 3, isn't it? Because the default for each of the pools is 3. I mean, you could write strength pool plus dex pool plus con pool if you wanted to, but we know it's always going to be 18, isn't it? Let's test that. There we go. But as you see, when we change this, nothing happens because we haven't really implemented the on input, but at least it's throwing an error, meaning it's recognizing that we're changing it. So the reference error is strength is not defined. Okay, so first of all, let's check we got change pool ability strength, ability dex, ability con, ability int, ability whiz, ability char. So yes, for each of these inputs, when we change them, when we input something, it'll run this change pool method. So go up and find that. Change pool. I've made this mistake again. I'm in the habit of this. That's why that error is throwing, because we're not prefixing it with the enum name. It's easy to fix though. Now what happens? What happens when they change their dice? Well, we want to update the strength pool, don't we? So strength pool will equal what? Well, we can get the document get element by ID strength pool. Now we want its value, don't we? I think that's all we want. So we're going to update the strength pool to equal, and all the pools to equal the relevant, the selected number. So this will be char pool, whiz pool, int pool, con pool, dex pool, int pool, and whiz pool, char pool. Okay, so we're getting the pool from the individual abilities. Total, find the current total. Simply enough, we just need to add them up, don't we? So we can go dice pool total will equal strength pool plus dex pool plus con pool int pool plus whiz pool plus char pool. Okay. Now because we're updating that total, we need to update the UI, don't we? Update the UI. Just say we didn't do that. Let's see what happens. So we're changing strength, for example. We're not getting an error, that's good, but this output isn't being updated, is it? So just simply enough, we can just go update UI. Something's going wrong here. Of course, we've got dice instead of ability, haven't we? So ability, this enum is the ability enum, not the dice enum. It's easy to make these mistakes. So there's ability, there's dice. So yeah, it was doing nothing basically. Okay, let's try that. Right, I see what it's doing. See, it's just attaching these as strings. So it's concatenating 3 and 5 and 3 to form a string. It's not adding them as in mathematics adding them. So we just need to make sure that we're getting an integer from this. So this value obviously is considered to be a string. So there's an inbuilt function parseInt. So it'll look at the string and get the integer from it. Let me just check that with strength pool first. Yeah, so see it's adding it now. But if we do one of these ones, it'll probably make a string, yeah. So we need to go ahead and parseInt for each of these ones. Oops. Okay, oops, let's try that. Good. So as we add more dice, we can go up and up and up and up to our maximum of 13. The only problem, it's not restricting us, is it? We'll have to implement that. We can't go down, we can't, but what if we typed in a number 2? Did you notice when I use the keyboard and I remove it, it's putting NaN there? That's not really what we want. That means that when we remove the digit, it's probably treating that as a blank string, and so it can't add it. So we'll have to detect that somehow. I'm thinking we need to know when we reach our maximum, don't we? We need to know when we reach 24. Like, we're well over 24 now. So what would happen ideally? We get to 24. There we are. And if they try to click this, nothing will happen, will it? So we need to test when is this above the maximum dice pool. So I think to do that, we should probably set up some temporary variables. So variable strength pool temp. And we'll just say that's equal to our strength pool. So we'll initialize it to have the same value as our initial strength pool. And do that for each of the abilities, dex, con, int, wiz, and char, wiz, int, con, dex. And how about we set this to our temp? So instead of updating our actual pool, we'll set it to our temp pool and do some testing to make sure we really do want the change. Okay. Now remember, if they use the keyboard, they can get an NaN, so not a number. So we should probably test for not a number here. Right, so strength pool temp will equal, now let's test for is not a number, is NaN. So if that's not a number, so if it's a string or whatever, then we'll just set it to 0 so that we can still calculate a total. Otherwise it's equal to itself. Do that for each of these. Wisdom, intelligence, con, and finally dex. Okay, find the temp total, the temp pool total. So we can just make a, we'll leave, temp pool total. So it'll be this, it'll be the sum of all the temporary pools. The reason we're doing this is so that we can test whether it goes above the maximum, and if it does, we don't want to update. We don't want to update it. We don't want to allow the user to do that. So find the temp pool total, and don't only update if doesn't exceed the max. Okay, so if temp pool total is less than or equal to the dice pool, remember we were setting the dice pool max somewhere? Dice pool max, when they hit the radio button, we set either 24 or 28 to this variable. So if it's less than that, that's okay, isn't it? They can keep assigning. So if it's less than that, we want to set the well, first of all, we want a dice pool total will equal the temp pool total. Remember, that's our column total, temp pool total. And the strength pool will equal the strength pool temp. So we're happy to assign this at this stage. Do that for each of them. Dex, not details, con, int, wiz, char. I'm just going backwards so I don't go insane. Int, con, dex. Let's try it. I'm sure there'll be some issues. Just make sure these are all, just occasionally do a sanity check, just to make sure that other things are working still. Dice pool. Okay. So that seems to be adding up. Now what happens when we reach 24? Yeah, we can't go any further. We can go down though, can't we? Yeah, so that seems to be working. It's not allowing us to go further higher than 24 because we've implemented that restriction. So let's try it for 28. Yeah. Yeah. Looking good so far. Now what happens if we start doing this? Good. Well, almost good. When we hit the backspace key here, so as if I was editing it, it sets it to 0. Not the most user-friendly. Behind the scenes we want it to set to 0, but we don't want it to display 0, do we? Okay. So that's easy fix. So up here we're saying if it's not a number, just set it to 0. But the output, we don't want it to be 0. We set it to 0 so that we could do this calculation, this integer calculation. But on the output, strength pool temp equals 0. If that equals 0, we want to just display an empty string as per the normal functionality. Or itself. So we'll do that for each of these, except we'll be displaying the actual pool. It's not displaying, sorry, assigning the actual pool. Con dex. Let's try it. So this should work. We can go up to 28. Yep. If we delete that, yeah, we can delete it. It removes the 4. We can type in 2, type in 3, type in 4. We can't type in 5. It won't let us go over, which is good. It won't let us go over 28, but we can type in 4. I'll type in 2 just to make sure it doesn't... Oh, we're not enabling our roll button, are we? We have to do that too. So when do we enable our roll button? What's the condition for that? Enable roll. Well, it's actually enable or disable roll button, isn't it? Because if they go under 24, again, we want to disable it. Roll button. So in our set dice, we were enabling that, weren't we? Here, disable the roll button. So we want to do something similar to this. So back up to our change method. So it's disabled when dice pool total equals the dice pool total equals the dice pool max. Is that right? So when the dice pool total equals dice pool max, that means we've hit 24. That means it's not disabled. So when that not equals that, yeah. So when they don't equal each other, it's disabled. When they do equal each other, it's enabled. Let's try. Yep, there we go. So the roll button's there. What if we reduce that? It's not enabled anymore. Good. So it won't let us roll if it's under 24. Oh, there's a good test. See when I've got my cursor inside there, I've put it to something that's not valid. See if I click outside of that, it's not valid. I'll try that again. So it's not, hang on. It's onto me now. Oh no, there we go. So it's under. What if I go here and click that? Now that's valid, it lets me roll, doesn't it? But it's not saying it's an error. Let's see what happens. Oh no, it's smart. It's pretty smart. Anyway, that's good. That means the inbuilt validation's working well. Right, so we can't go above our total. Let's test it with 28. Yeah, but we can roll. As soon as we go under, it's not letting us roll. So that's good. Great. Have we got any issues with any of that? No. Looks all right. Now what happens when we do roll it? Okay, so we haven't implemented our roll method, so let's go ahead and do that. Roll, here we go. So we've got the standard case, the classic case, and the heroic case. We need to do a similar thing for each of the two new ones. Now we know they're doing essentially the same thing, aren't they? So we don't really need to implement it twice. We can just let it flow through like that. So if the method is the dice pool 24, it'll automatically flow through into the dice pool 28. And we'll roll dice pool. We'll create a method, roll dice pool. Good. Go ahead and create those methods, that method. Roll function roll classic, function roll dice pool. Now what do we need to know here? In similar way to roll classic, we're going to roll some dice, aren't we? Return some totals. Well, we need to know here, don't we? We need to know how many dice there are, because it varies. It's whatever the user selected. So how about we go num dice, the number of dice. And then we'll have to switch how will we do this? Well, we know there could be a total of 13 dice. If they put all 10 dice in the 28d6 method into a single ability, then there could be 13 dice. So there could be case 13. Something happens. Knowing that there could be 13 dice, we should, back up here, we should probably create 13 dice. Sounds a bit unwieldy, but we'll find an easy way to do it. So just go ahead and do that. D6, D7, D8, D9, D10, D11, D12, and D13. Roll. So this is the problem I'm foreseeing, is that before we are clearing each dice, the dice that aren't used, because if we switch between methods, they'll be kept in memory. How about we create an easier way to do that? So in each method, all we do is roll the dice that it requires and return the result. So we'll get rid of things like that. So for this method, we don't need to clear. We'll make a general method that clears all the other dice. So we'll get rid of that and that. Roll standard's fine. How about clear dice? Before we roll any dice, so before we make any roll, we'll clear all the dice. That sounds good. Roll heroic. Roll dice pool, yeah, we'll clear all the dice. Roll classic. Okay, let's go ahead and create that function. So it'll be called clear dice. What does it do? Well, it just sets each D1 equals that. Clear all them. Good. Because we've modified existing roll functions, roll classic and all that, we should make sure that still works. I've got an error first. Expected got that 223. 223, there's something to do with a parenthesis. 2, 2, 3. Oh, okay, I've got a incomplete switch statement here. Switch something, switch num dice. Okay, make sure the standard methods are working. Yeah, it's got rolling 4, adding the best 3. Yep. Heroic. Good. Dice pool. It shouldn't. Yeah, okay, at least it's filling out the things, but we haven't really implemented it correctly. So that clear method is working, that's what we've proven. Clear dice. Now what happens here? What do we want to happen here? In case 13, we want to say D13 equals, just as we've done for these methods, we just want to roll a die, don't we? The way I'm going to do this is for each, I'm going to rely on it falling through. So when this number of dice equals say 13, we want to roll all dice, don't we? When it equals say 5, we want to skip 13, skip 12, skip 11, right? So this, the way we're structuring this will do that. It'll only start from where the number of dice ends. So it'll start from where it enters. So if it's 10, it'll start from here and go downwards, which is perfect for our needs. Five, 4, 3. Actually, 3 will be our last one, won't it? Because we don't need to. There will be never a case where it's 2, because we'll always have a minimum of 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and clean that up. So if there's 8 dice, we want to roll the 8th die, the 7th die, the 6th, the 5th, the 4th. And here we want to roll the 3rd, the 2nd, and the 1st, don't we? They'll always, these 3 die will always be rolled, no matter what number comes in. That's great. Just for completeness, we'll put a break in there. But we do not want to break here, because if we broke here, then it'll just roll it'll roll the 13th die, and that's it, which we don't want. Okay, the next step is to return the top 3, don't we? So we got this dice pool, whether it's 13 dice or 10 dice or whatever, and we need to get the top 3 and sum that and return it. So how can we get the top 3? So we need to, there's a few ways we could do this. The first one that pops into my head is to create an array. So how about we create an array of dice and sort it. So can you see if we sort the array of dice into a descending order, that means the first 3 will be the top 3, won't they? And then we'll just add them. So to do that, let's create a variable. You can call it whatever you want. We'll say all dice will equal a new array. Now, it's just going to be all the dice, isn't it? D1, D2, D3, D4. I'll just type it. D5, D6, D7, D8, D9, D10, D11, D12, D13. Now, some of these might be blank. So remember, we cleared dice, so we set them all to an empty string. But that's okay, because I think the sort function, the inbuilt sort function, will handle that. And then all we have to do is go all dice, so it's because it's an array, we can run this sort method on it. And inside that, I think we have to put a function. So function, just as we set up functions here, we can just make a generic function a, b. A, b being the two dice that it'll be comparing each time. Now, if a is less than b, we just want to return 1. So usually with sort functions they return 1, 0 or -1 just to know which is bigger, which is smaller. Now else if a, now there is the option that it's equal. If it's equal, what happens? So if we get a 5 and a 5, well, we can return 0. That means they're neither bigger nor smaller than one another. Otherwise, we just want to return -1, meaning it's smaller or bigger, whichever way you want to look at it. But that's generally how a sort function works. It just compares two numbers, goes through each of the arrays, each of the elements of the array, and sorts it using this logic. So let's assume that all dice are sorted now. Return the top sum of the top 3. So if we roll 13 dice, and within those 13 dice there's, say, 5 6s, well, the result will be 18, won't it? So return all dice. So it'll be the first element. Remember the elements start at 0, plus the second element, which is 1, plus the third element, second, 0, 1 and 2. Let's see what that does. Missing 2, 6, 4. Oh, I see. Because this is technically it's on a single line, we'd end this sort function, this sort call, with a parenthesis and a semicolon. Make sure this is working. Yeah, it's working. Okay, now dice pool. We can't roll until we select, so we'll just put 9 dice under that one. Roll. Okay, not doing what we want. Roll dice pool. Ah, see that I've got a parameter here, number of dice, and we've put no parameter here, no argument. Strength pool, dex pool, con pool, int pool, whiz pool, char pool. Right. I think it looks like it's working, except that it's not showing all the dice. So that just means our display dice method, whatever that's called. I think we've got get mod string, get dice string. Oh, here we go. We just have to go ahead and do this for each of the dice. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I think the maths is working well, it's just that we weren't displaying the full dice string. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now remember, we're setting all the other dice to blank strings. So if they've only got 6 dice, it won't show anything after the 6th die. Try for strength, put maximum into that. Right, so let's see if it's working first. So 17, so it's the top 3, so 6 plus 6, 12, 17, yep. Those ones are working. Let's change it to something a bit more. There we go, we've got a 4, a 5 and a 6. So 6 on the top, 6 plus 4 plus 6 is 16, yep. 6 plus 4 is 2 is 12. The top 3, 5 plus 5 plus 3 is 13, yes. Top 3, 5 plus 3 plus 3 is 11, that's correct. Those look alright. Roll again. 4, 6, 5 is 6 plus 4, 15, yep. That's a 7, 15, 16, that seems to be going okay. Let's try one with a 13. Bang. Not ideal to have this huge thing, but to keep everything honest, we should keep this column so that they can see their results. So even though there's 13, it's not a guaranteed. It's not a guarantee to get 18, is it? We'll keep rolling that. 17, 16, you get generally fairly high. Actually, it's a bit of a waste to put 13 die into a single ability, because you don't guarantee yourself anything, honestly. 16, 8, there's an 18. It took a fair few rolls to get an 18, didn't it? A 6, a 6, and a 6. And there's only 3 6s there. An 18 again. 17, you get typically 16 or above. 18, 17, 18, 18, 17. Oh, 14, that's a bit lower. 15. Yeah, so you don't get terribly low. I reckon if you're doing this for real, you'd probably put into ones that you want fairly high, you'd put 5. Possibly even 6 if you wanted. Yeah, you could put 3 at 6 if you wanted to. And just say you want 1 at 4. It's an okay rolling method. But I think what we've proven is that this is working. So 24. Great. Just see if we put a error into it. Well, it's something that we know is wrong. Yep, it pulls us up. Can we put like 200 in there? No, we can only go up to the max. Yeah, I'm trying to type 4, it doesn't work. I can type 3, great. But it will not let us roll unless we've got the all dice assigned. So I think we're done. Let me know how you go on. And let me know how you fare, and we'll continue in another tutorial. Thank you.